Great, thank you. So welcome everybody. We are very excited to have Dr. Chris Vandervoort with us today, who's going to be talking about the ARPA-E program. Really quickly, just want to kind of introduce ourselves, our office, for those of you who have not joined us before. So I'm Arian Olish. I'm the Executive Director for the Office of Student and Faculty Innovation at West Virginia University. With me, I have my program manager, Dr. Jessica Allen, who oversees a lot of our programming as well as our I-Core program at WVU. And so today, like I said, we are joined by Dr. Vandervoort. So he is the Technology to Market Advisor at the Advanced Research Projects Agency, or as you all probably more commonly know it, ARPA-E. Prior to joining ARPA-E, Dr. Vandervoort was with General Electric for 29 years, which is an incredible career to have at GE. And he focused on product development, introduction, manufacturing, and sales. Dr. Vandervoort received his PhD in mechanical engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and impressively has been awarded 37 patents, which is, Chris, quite an accomplishment. So that's fantastic. So like I mentioned, he's going to be here to talk about ARPA-E today, their mission, impact, technology, that sort of thing. Really appreciate everybody being with us. We are recording. We will have the recording of this webinar posted to our website later in the month. So check back to our website for that. And we'll also be hosting more of these style webinars in the coming months. So like I said, check out our website to stay up to date on any upcoming webinars. I'm going to turn things over to Chris now. Chris, you can, like I said, feel free to either let people ask questions during the conversation or hold till the app when we're done. But we should also have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, and we'll should be wrapping up right at noon. So I will turn things over to you.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you for your interest in ARPA-E. Thanks to West Virginia University of West Virginia. I know we have one active project on Ultimate. I know there are previous projects, and we thank you for your contributions and are optimistic for your future contributions. My goal this morning is to give you some background, specifically the history, the mission, the impact, and then the technology of ARPA-E. About roughly 10 charts in, I've got several charts that talk about how to get involved with ARPA-E programs. I think that's probably my highest priority for this hour. I want all of you to be familiar with how we work and the process to win awards from ARPA-E, and then how that project would be executed. At the end, I have several examples of two current projects, one of which is Ultimate, and then also a new initiative for undergrounding of electric power distribution. And we always like to come up with fun titles. And the title of that program is Gophers, after the cute furry that wrote it. So I hope we have some time to talk about Gophers. Here's the outline. We'll start off with that history, mission, and impact. We'll get into funding opportunities. I do have a couple charts on career opportunities. We're hiring, and ARPA-E is a great place to work. And we'll cover that in more detail. We'll talk about our active program portfolio, and then unsolved problems. And Gophers is an example of an unsolved problem. So first of all, our history, I'm going to take you all the way back to the 1950s, the Cold War, the Sputnik. And this is when the government launched the Advanced Research Projects Agency. And essentially that was the beginning of the space race. NASA was launched, and ARPA pivoted to become much more defense oriented and in the quotes, to create weapon systems of the future. Of course, the Vietnam War in the 60s, early 70s, ARPA was heavily involved in counterinsurgency, many undocumented secret projects. In 1966, ARPA developed the ARPA-Net, which is one of the founding sources for today's internet. Other projects have been GPS, UAVs, drones. Maybe the biggest success story of all is the stealth technology and the stealth fighter and later on the stealth bomber. The computer mouse, if you go to the DARPA Wikipedia site, you'll actually see photographs of that very first computer mouse that was developed at DARPA. Siri, night vision, and laser guided weapons. They changed the name to DARPA in 1972 with D as defense. And then move forward to 2007. And for those of you who can recall, we were in the midst of a banking crisis, literally a worldwide financial crisis. There were a lot of concerns about how we could help the economy recover. One of the major actions was for the national academies to recommend Congress to establish ARPA for energy within the US Department of Energy. And our goal was to be revolutionary versus evolutionary. We wanted to be a source of new and I think some even use the term crazy ideas, specifically ideas that wouldn't be funded on their own merits, even at a university or a small or large company. And so to 2007, the agency was formed. Fast forward to 2009, the agency received its first appropriation of $400 million. I was with GE at that time, and I can certainly recall the excitement and the opportunity that this was a way to fund ideas that we couldn't convince the corporate leadership to fund. Fast forward to 2021, we have 1,270 plus awards, 60 programs. Our current funding in 21 was 427 million. That went up to almost 450 million in 2022, and we're just a little above that in 2023. So we are part of the US Department of Energy. We work to collaborate very closely with all the branches. We have regular conversations with different parts of DOE. We started off with a mandate of in three areas. One is to reduce imports. A second is to improve efficiency. And that's really throughout the entire energy system, generation, transmission, distribution, and usage, both consumer and industrial, and also to reduce emissions. And obviously we've been very focused on decarbonization, but in addition, we remain concerned about air emissions, water emissions. And that's important because as we decarbonize, we certainly want to make sure that we take an integrated approach and reduce carbon while we're also reducing air and water pollution. And then several years ago, in 2021, we received two new mandates. One was to get involved in management, cleanup, and disposal of radioactive waste and spent nuclear fuel. The primary motivation is a recognition that nuclear power is inherently decarbonized. And as we look at options to decarbonize, it's become clear that none of the available options or predicted future options are perfect. They all have environmental impact. They all have potential adverse economic effects. And the goal is that we have a complete portfolio that includes all viable technologies. We certainly have history in the US and globally with nuclear power. However, there are legitimate concerns about cleanup and disposal of radioactive waste. So ARPA-E has become involved in this field. And the fifth area is to improve the resilience, reliability, and security of energy infrastructure. And when we say that, the topic of greatest concern is often the electric grid. And it's a concern today. The US has a higher essentially outage rate than most other OECD countries. There are business losses, there are potential adverse impacts on our population. So it's important to essentially improve the grid. Also, as we electrify, Princeton estimates that we will have to expand our grid capacity by a factor of 4 between now and 2050 to accommodate a fully renewable grid. So if we're going to take our existing grid, which is far from perfect, expand it by a factor of 4 in now less than 30 years, we're going to have to develop and inject technologies. So that there are some key differences, and this chart is important because it gives you some insight on our culture and our approach. So first of all, with ARPA-E, the vast majority of our funding is dedicated through in-house contracting. We have fellows, and fellows are essentially our ARPA-E postdocs as creative resources. Early on, the mandate included tech to market, like myself. Every ARPA-E program and project has a tech to market element. And that's because we want the research to be relevant. Our motto essentially is, if it works, will it matter? There's just an infinite number of interesting problems, but we want to go after the ones that have viable commercial opportunities to literally make people's lives better. The majority of our awards are cooperative agreements, and just a couple of culture elements. So one, institutional independence. We don't have a specific mandate other than our essential 5 high-level missions. We intentionally focus on high risk but high return. Our program directors take a very strong interest in the execution of our projects. And that's the level of interest, the level of feedback, the level of guidance is special versus other parts of the government. We empower our program directors. They have authority to increase funding, decrease funding, cancel projects if warranted. Our organization is very flat. We essentially have a director, Dr. Evelyn Wayne. We have several deputy directors, and then there's all of us, the fellows, T2Ms, program directors. When we develop a program, we go through intensive internal reviews, and that's typically a combination of the staff, the fellows, program directors, T2Ms. We go through a very rigorous process, and that will include getting as much external input as we can. We'll do requests for information. Typically in RFI, we'd like to get 50 or more responses. And these responses are very important because it teaches us about the technology. It helps us prioritize the direction. It helps us justify funding. So the pre-work for a program is very important. We have a special hiring authority with term limits. You heard my bio. I retired from GE, but I wasn't ready to spend my days playing golf. And this is actually ideal. I can sign on for 3 to 4 years. There's a lot of value in that. We don't join ARPA-E as just a lifetime assignment. We join ARPA-E because we want to make a difference in a short period of time. And in my case, I'm at 16 months, and I'm already thinking about what are the things that I most want to accomplish in the 2 years that I have left. And having that mindset is actually very helpful. It adds a sense of urgency that may not exist in other parts of the government. And then because we're flat, because we have empowered program directors, we can be very nimble. As I said, we can increase funding if warranted. We can increase either technical or tech to market funding as required. And if we have a project that just doesn't look like it's going to pan out, then sometimes we'll just cut the cord. So based on DARPA, but different. And then I just want to note that the model is being leveraged. ARPA-H Health was developed in 2022, and ARPA-I for infrastructure is starting up in 2023. We also have an organization in the UK, ARIA, and there are similar initiatives in Japan, Australia, and other parts of Asia and Europe. So this is seen as a successful model for innovation and commercial development. I'd like to show this. Typically, if you think about investment for a concept over time, research, this is often what we refer to as our phase one. So research will begin after a program is developed, announced, we'll have received proposals, we'll have made awards. Phase two is typically prototype. And just a ballpark number, research average contract funding amount would be about $1.5 million. Phase two could be anywhere from 5 to excess of 10 million. And then I'll talk a little bit more about scale up. In the last couple of years, we've added a scale up initiative, and that's our opportunity to take projects from a phase two into a full demonstration phase. And a scale up can be in excess of $10 million. This shows essentially cost versus performance as a function of time. And the blue lines are 100% intentional. And what you'll see in this case is 3 out of 4 blue lines end at some point. And that's because we took a risk. We gambled on a high risk technology. And we can't expect, if our expectation is to be 100% successful, then unfortunately, organizations just stop taking risks. So what you see here is essentially 3 out of 4 projects that don't go any further. They hit roadblocks. But what's really special is you've got a small number of projects that truly become disruptors, and that's the revolutionary element of ARPA-E. That's our goal. I'm going to skip that. So tech to market, just a little bit about what I do. We help our teams take a strategic approach to the markets. We always want them to have a primary market. Secondary and tertiary are better. We will manage to make sure that they'll do things like a techno-economic assessment. We always want them to be focused on cost and performance. We want them to think about things like servicing, insurability, financeability. We want them to talk about who their partners would be. We want them to think about their approach to commercialization. Do they want a license? Do they want to start a small company? Do they want to be acquired by a large company? We're completely open to the path that they choose, but they have to have a path. So we'll advise them. And all of us on the T2M team have significant networks. We would never tell a performer who they should partner with, but we routinely tell them that they need a partner. And if you think about the university projects at a place like University of West Virginia, so often the professors and the staff are the sources of great ideas and great technology. But in a university environment, you might not have opportunities for commercialization. And so very commonly, when we work with universities, one of our sources of guidance will be helping them think about essentially the realities of commercialization. And a partnership is a big deal. So what makes an ARPA-E project? Number one, high impact in our mission areas. There are branches of the government that do focus on evolutionary research and development, and that's important. Our particular mandate is that we want to look at high impact, and but as a result, we have to take on that high risk. We want to see a path to market. We very much want to see commercial applications in the US. We want to promote manufacturing. We want to make life better for the population. We truly want to transform. Our goal is to make changes for all the right reasons. We like to be classified as disruptors. That's very much our objective. We want to take leaps beyond today's technology. In the T2M in particular, we want to translate science into breakthrough technologies. We want to help out on research that literally couldn't find funding elsewhere. And we want very strong teams. And one specific suggestion I'll make, I often get the question, what's the most important ingredient of a successful ARPA-E proposal? And the answer I would give is in your partnerships. I can't think of a single ARPA-E proposal that was awarded that came from essentially a single entity. The majority of winning proposals are anywhere from 3 to 6 entities. Obviously, you've got a principal investigator, you've got a lead on the project. But at least that experience would suggest that no one entity has every element they need for success. And that's both on the technology and the commercialization side. As a new program comes out or a new initiative, really the sooner you begin thinking about who your partner should be, the better, because it takes time to line up these agreements. Our impact and accomplishments, I'm not going to read everything. I'm going to point out a couple things. We've now awarded over $3.27 billion of federal funds to our contractors. I like to go very quickly to the patents. We're getting close to 1,000 patents, and I guarantee we'll have a celebration when we get there. I like the fact that we formed 131 companies, and I like the fact that we also have, we're nearing 300 technology licenses. So these are metrics that we're proud of, but we're focusing on continuing to grow these metrics. And then I've talked about our core culture, but I just want to highlight a few points. We try to be entrepreneurial and startup-esque. We are term limited because that really gives us a set of priorities over a given time frame. We value the work of our fellows. We work closely with the program directors. We work very hard to be collaborative instead of competitive. We're flat, we're nimble. We don't have a roadmap. We focus on essentially those 5 mission areas. And we have to be comfortable with risk, and we have to essentially live with ourselves as an organization, because every project is not going to work out. You saw the chart before, 1 in 4 success rate, and that's probably optimistic. So we need to have a conversation and accept that, okay, we had a really interesting idea. We dug into it, we learned, and at least given the status technology and the supporting technologies, 2023 just isn't the right time. So these may be the most important charts. Our funding vehicles, we have focus programs, and that's typically $30 to $45 million over 3 years. And these focus programs are the result of a new idea, and a new idea can come from anywhere. I will highlight the summit as a great source of ideas. Typically, a fellow or a program director will take it and run. There'll be a significant amount of internal effort. We'll make a call for RFIs. If everything is promising, we'll do a workshop in the public domain. We'll invite experts. We'll have breakout sections. And if that all goes well, and if we're authorized, this will become a focus program. As I mentioned, Gophers is one of our focus programs for 2023. We also have exploratory technologies. And one of our most recent examples is that we're looking at low energy nuclear reactions, otherwise known as cold fusion. And this is an area that has been highly controversial for roughly, I have to do some math, roughly 25 years since the very first publications. There's still debate amongst the scientific communities. Google had invested quite a bit of money digging in, and Google ended up being non-conclusive. And with LENR, ARPA-E is working with about 10 top universities with the right instrumentation, the right strategy to give us definitive answers on low energy nuclear reactions. We have a CREATE program, and this is for smaller grants. We have an open program, and open occurs every 3 years. Our last open call was open 2021. Proposals were called for in late 2020. We will call for proposals late this year in anticipation of open 2024. Open is, as it says, if you've got an idea and it benefits any of our 5 mission areas, we're interested. If it benefits multiple of those 5, that's even better. And then Scale Up is a program that we started in 2021. And that lets us take projects that have gone through both a phase 1 and a phase 2 and fund them to into a true demonstration phase. And I think that's all clear. So here it is, with ease and vision, engage, evaluate, establish, execute, and then transition towards market adoption. This just shows the steps, and kind of on a step-by-step basis. Conception, workshop, approval, FOAs, merit reviews, proposals, evaluations, and rebuttals, and then all the way up to project handoff, and then moving forward with the project. It's always helpful to see a few statistics. I'd alluded to this earlier in the talk. So just color code, a light blue is active, darker blue is alumni. And what you'll see is that we certainly have a trend. The majority of our projects have gone to universities. The next highest set of bars is small business, then large business, national labs, and we've had several projects go to nonprofits. And then this shows a breakdown by technical area. The largest light blue is generation. And that's because we have a number of programs in renewable generation, solar, water, or hydro. And we also have programs here for nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. And we also have an active program that I'll touch on for decarbonization of natural gas-fired combined cycles. So currently, generation is the largest of the bars. Then if you look at a couple other large bars, you'll see electrical efficiency, you'll see grid, manufacturing. We have a new initiative forming in iron and steel. It turns out decarbonizing iron and steel is proving very difficult. However, it is a very measurable source of CO2 and something that we'd like to go after. Transportation fuels, we've done a lot for sustainable fuels. It's likely we'll do more specifically for sustainable aviation fuels. I think the experts would all agree commercial aviation will be difficult to decarbonize. And one possible solution is certainly sustainable aviation fuels. And then we routinely have exploratory topics. And here I'd ask you to take a look at the row near the bottom. And you see the categories: new technology areas, portfolio complement, white space exploration. New technology areas don't really need an explanation. A portfolio complement, this could be an area where we have a funded program, but we found a special technology area that is very challenging, and it just needs additional resources. And an example I'll give you is heat exchangers for supercritical CO2 cycles. What I think we knew this going in, but what's even been further confirmed is that for supercritical CO2 cycles, heat exchanger technology is critical. And as a result, we kicked off the topology program, and that's really helping us come up with better heat exchangers. And that's from a manufacturability, from a reliability, a life cycle, and a cost perspective. And then white space exploration. And seed is a good example. Seed is an opportunity to come in with just completely new revolutionary ideas. I do want to show ARPA-E awards by state. And there's a circle on West Virginia. We certainly appreciate the work that you've performed on Ultimate. We appreciate the work that you've performed in the past. And I'm hopeful that this seminar will help spark some new ideas and some new proposals. I suspect every one of you on the call would like to see that color go from light blue to a darker blue. I commented on open already. There's some numbers, if you go all the way to the bottom right, open 2021, 68 projects, 175 million investment over 13 technical areas. And open is one of the best opportunities to write a proposal on something truly new. If you go to our forward page, you'll find very few guidelines. If you have any concept that ties to our 5 mission areas, you'll probably see at least a couple sentences in the follow-up. So, and the time is right. My suggestion is if you've got some ideas for Open 2024, the sooner you can start thinking it over, think about who your partners would be, and just do everything you can to prepare yourselves to have a strong proposal. So now's the time. Here's scale up. For scale up 2019, we had 10 awardees, $70 million plus. The math is easy. So roughly a scale up project is about $7 million, but the range is truly 5 to 10. I often get the question of how competitive is it? And it's competitive enough that your odds of winning are just below 10%. So this is an area where the good news is it's enough funding to really make a difference towards commercialization. I think we all wish we had a bigger budget because we certainly have an ample number of strong proposals, and we're limited by funding. into how many awards that we can make. This is our portfolio, and I'm going to say a few words on Flex and Ultimate, and then we'll take a few minutes to talk about power delivery and gophers specifically. I want to stop here. It's very easy to sign up for our ARPA-E newsletter. It's very easy to learn about us. I think by intent, everything I've said this morning is public information. Really, my goal here is not to provide new information. My goal here is to make sure you can find existing information as quickly as possible. We have a FOA page. Just do an internet search on ARPA-E space FOA. You'll find our FOA page. You'll find out what's active. If you have any difficulty finding this information, send me an email. And then I also want to put in a plug. Sounds like we had excellent attendance from the university for our summit this year. We announced our summit for 2024 to be held on the dates of May 22nd through 24th. It'll be in Dallas, Texas at the Gaylord National. And before we started, we were just discussing, we were very happy with the summit. We had great attendance. This year we were over 2,500. So it's been increasing every year. We always have excellent speakers that did a great job. We have panels, but to a lot of us, the highlight is the technology showcase. And this is where every active ARPA-E project has a booth. We help make sure that they take the time. If they have demonstration items, that's ideal. We'd love to see videos. At a minimum, we want to see posters. We want the booth to be staffed on a regular basis. And if that means you rely on graduate students, that's terrific, because it's a great experience for them. So the tech showcase is almost always running, and it's just it's wonderful to walk through and see all the learning, all the communication, all the networking. I think you could argue it's the best part of the summit. The keynotes were terrific. Networking opportunities, probably unparalleled, I think is right. And then we also do these fast-paced technology pitches. And we work very hard to make sure they're no more than 8 minutes. And the thought is, if you can't explain your great new idea in 8 minutes or less, you probably need to work harder. So I'd encourage all of you, if you can, think about attending the summit for 2024. Career opportunities. I'm going to go quickly here. Could be the hallmark of your career. It's a great place to work. We are term limited. Don't make it a full career. It's a chance to contribute to the energy future. We have experts who are wonderful to talk to. I love talking to our startup businesses. I love the startup culture. It's just really exciting. And my background was heavily gas turbine, steam turbine, power generation focused. And since joining ARPA-E, I've had this chance to work on gophers, which is electrical power distribution. And also I worked on ultrafast, which is optically triggered power electronics. So it's a great place to learn new things. Easy to find if you want to apply. Program directors do the program development. They do very active project management, thought leadership, and explore these new tech areas. T2Ms like myself, we focus on business development, marketing, TEAs, and stakeholders. And then our fellows, they have almost unlimited opportunity at ARPA-E. If they have an idea, or if they hear an idea that they'd like to pursue, they're given the go-ahead to do that. They're typically 2-year assignments. After 2 years, they've all found that they have many interesting job opportunities and career directions. Active program portfolio. I'm looking at the clock. I'll say a few words of Flex, and this was a perfect fit to my background. I spent a lot of my career working on natural gas fired combined cycles, and there are many attributes. They're highly efficient. Today's generation are 64% plus efficient on a net basis. Flexibility is unparalleled. The industry has moved very quickly. They can ramp up and down. The latest combined cycles can ramp up and down by hundreds of megawatts in just a few minutes. So highly flexible, and that's important because with renewable generation on the grid, intermittency has become a real challenge for the grid operators, and the ability of these combined cycles to ramp up and down quickly lets them manage the grid successfully. However, we need to decarbonize natural gas fired combined cycles. And Flex started off looking at a number of different approaches, essentially front end and or back end. Several had various types of energy storage technologies. We're currently entering phase 2. So I can't talk about which projects will be advanced to phase 2. We're in the midst of negotiation. With phase 2, we've developed a new focus on retrofit opportunities. It's very difficult in this country to build a new gas-fired combined cycle. We just had a case in Montana that had moved forward for about 5 years. And then all of a sudden they seem to have hit a brick wall. However, we have about 1,000 natural gas power plants across the US. And every one of these is a retrofit opportunity. And the current thought is that you would have a back-end carbon capture system, and you could essentially retrofit it to an existing power plant. And within the retrofit time period, you go from a carbon source to ideally zero carbon, depending on how much carbon you can take out. We started off with 42.5 million, 12 projects, and we're just entering phase 2. And I just want to show there were 3 sub-elements of the program. Solvents, sorbents, and membranes, and that's essentially carbon capture systems. We had several projects that looked at flexibility via thermal or chemical storage. And then we had flexibility via DAC or direct air capture. These were the program participants. From here, I want to go to Ultimate. Ultimate is focused on a next generation of ultra-high temperature materials, continuously operating at greater than 1,300 degrees C, and capable of withstanding T4. And T4 is essentially the turbine inlet temperature for a gas turbine or a jet engine of greater than 1,800 C. And along with developing the materials, and the material is truly both a base alloy and a thermal barrier coating. Between the alloy and the thermal coating, typically you'll need 1 or more bond coats. So this is truly materials and coatings. On top of that, it's manufacturing. And the goal is to enable a step change for gas turbines and jet engines of 5 to 7%. And if you do some simple math, that takes you up to 70% on a net basis. And if you think about a couple numbers, so today, natural gas is a major contributor. But even in 2050, and this is according to a Princeton study, the belief is that we'll still have significant generation from natural gas. And it's really, it's situations where we don't have wind, we don't have solar. And even though the country is building battery storage and other storage technologies as fast as we can, The reality is we just can't move fast enough. Air travel, and I mentioned the difficulty of decarbonizing air travel. Ideally, we'll come up with the right technologies. ARPA-E is funding hybrid aviation. We're funding battery aviation. We're really trying to touch all the bases. But in that interim, if we can increase jet engine efficiency by that 5 to 7%, that's a significant step forward towards reducing the carbon footprint. And then the lower plot, it just shows the projection, and even up to 2050, natural gas will continue to play a major role, and that just makes it so much more important to increase the efficiency. And then if you can couple it with flux, if you have higher efficiency, plus you can decarbonize, you've made a difference. Let's go back. Yeah, I'm not going to read this chart given where we are on time, but this shows the ultimate program portfolio, and West Virginia University is a participant in the novel base alloy development. Now I want to spend just a few minutes on unsolved problems. Moving forward, so I mentioned the 4X. This shows where that came from. It's the Princeton Net Zero America report, and it just shows the almost incredible expansion we'll need in the grid between 2020 and 2050, 4X expansion. And just marching through. Reliability, resilience will become even more critical. This was our finding, and this came out of our RFI and workshop. It's very difficult to exactly quantify outage costs because you've got direct costs and you've got indirect costs. But we ended up being comfortable with this number of roughly $80 to $150 billion per year. Our reliability is worse than other OECD countries, and we need a way to improve grid reliability and resilience. 2022 was a year of reliability problems, and you just see 4 issues. So the grid is outdated. Overhead lines are unsafe if they come down. Overhead lines are vulnerable to extreme weather events and climate change. The picture in the upper right is California wildfires. And then when we do have an outage, especially in cities, it takes a long time. It's disruptive. It's unsafe. I spent the weekend in Montreal. I'm not sure if any of you have followed what's been happening. They had a ice storm of the century on Wednesday of last week. And as of this morning, there were still over 10,000 who didn't have power. And we arrived on Friday. When we arrived, there were still over 1 million customers in Montreal that did not have power as a result of the ice storm. So the US needs to improve our grid. Canada also needs to improve their grid. Why do we want underground? Statistically, it's very easy to show resilience, reliability are better. And this is true even from areas with hurricanes. It turns out it's a lot easier to drain water out of underground distribution and transmission than it is to rebuild if your power lines have been flattened by a hurricane. So Florida is a leader in the US in undergrounding their power transmission and distribution. Energy equity is important. Unfortunately, outages hit areas that are least able to respond. And with regard to the community, overhead power lines are not attractive. Sometimes it's striking to see the way that the utilities will cut out vegetation, specifically tree limbs. And where we'd like to see trees that are the shape that they should be, when we see some of the cutting away that has to be done to support power lines, it's often striking, and certainly it's not aesthetic. So this is the vision, and this is Gophers. So we need to be better at doing things underground. It turns out today's undergrounding is a slow process. And it's not because they can't move faster. It's because they don't know what's underground and they don't trust the information they have. So even if you do a survey, you don't have 100% confidence. And the consequence, if you hit a gas line, that's a big deal. That's a major safety hazard and a major disruption. If you hit a sewer line, then it's a major environmental problem. If you hit a water line or literally any other type of buried underground infrastructure, and at a minimum, it's an inconvenience. Worst case, it can be a personnel hazard and an economic loss. So we're looking at a couple things. We're looking at how do we best guide. So we'd like to do drilling. We don't want to do digging. We want to drill. If you drill, theoretically, you could go under streets and roads. And as long as you have the right permitting, the right plans, there would be almost no obstruction. We want look ahead sensing because we want to know what's ahead of us with high confidence. If there's a gas line ahead, we want to know. If there's a massive block of New England granite, we want to know because we might want to change the speed and type of our drill head. We want improved turning radius for obstacle avoidance. If we see something unexpected, we want to be able to immediately change our route to avoid it without stopping everything. And one of the issues with underground installation is that if you don't do it right the first time, it's very expensive to have to dig it back up and redo it. So one of the goals of the project is to come up with technologies that can increase the reliability or reduce the defects of installing new joints and conduit underground. So this is the Gophers program. And I think it's a good example of if it works, will it matter? And we think it will. And I'm going to stop here and take any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. So we've got just about 5 minutes left. So if anybody has any quick questions that they would like to ask Chris before we wrap up today.
Arian, I have a question real quick.
Sure.
So recently, Chris, the CREATE program had an open SBIR, STTR topic. How much time, this is an easy question, how much time typically lead time is there between when an opening is open and then when it, for SBIR, STTR, when they will close? I think the other one, it may have been 2 months at most. How much time is there usually between the opening and the closing date?
I would say 2 months would be about the best. And here's what slows things down: the review process. We can get well over 100 proposals. We'll typically bring in external reviewers to work with our internal. And the long pole in the tent is typically the review process. Once the reviews are complete, that's when we can make notifications, and that's when negotiations will begin. I would love to think that we could do it in 2 months, but that probably is the best case.
So is there any move to make that original opening window a little bit wider than 2 months? from when it's announced and when it closes?
I think it's a great suggestion. We're always looking for suggestions.
Thank you. It's just for small businesses, scrambling an application to the level of what's expected in 2 months is, tall order unless you have something kind of already ready.
I'm going to take that to our leadership. I think it's a great point.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, Berardo, here, if it's okay, only 1 minute. Chris, was very informative. You mentioned about teaming. I mean, realistically, what is your ideal teaming? I mean, why do you need teaming, and what are you looking for each team members?
Sure. We're looking for all the technical bases to be covered, plus T2M. And I'll give you an example out of Ultimate. So let's say you're developing an alloy. At a minimum, you're going to want an organization that can do testing. Because very likely you'll have some elements of testing that are above and beyond what you can do at your own university. So testing would be an example. For Ultimate, it was very helpful for teams to have a computational leg. Historically, metallurgy has been highly experimental, and that's for many good reasons. The computational side of metallurgy has made great strides over the past 10 to 20 years. So along with developing alloys, we'd like you to have a computational element plus that test element. And then for tech to market, it's very helpful if you can tie in with, for example, a turbine blade manufacturer or an end user, and that could be a Pratt & Whitney or a Honeywell. So having an end user is also very helpful. Again, not necessary, but just from my experience, I can't ever recall seeing a single entity win an ARPA-E proposal. And based on my background with GE, I think this is true for the most part across DOE and DOE. Another example of a partner would be on the supply chain side. And it doesn't need to be a large amount. I know in my former life, we wouldn't take a contract for less than 50K. But so let's say your phase 1 proposal is somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million. 100K for materials testing, 100K for analysis, 100K to think about the supply chain, and maybe the same entity can think about your commercial opportunities. That seems to be a winning approach.
Well, we are just at the top of the hour here, so this might be a good time to wrap up. But Chris, just really want to thank you again for taking the time. I know I personally learned a lot from this presentation, so I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned, we did record today's session, so we will have this up on our website in the next week or two. I really appreciate everybody joining us for today. Feel free to share this information with any of your colleagues that you think might benefit it. And we hope to see you at another webinar in the future.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.